Hey everybody, I think I'm going to break this up into a different video. I have a longer video going on troubleshooting this Galaxian board, but when I put it back in the cabinet, AC power wasn't working. So what I did is actually hooked up a Pac-Man transformer, wired up my AC power, so I could troubleshoot the AC power section. It's very simple to troubleshoot. There's not a lot of components. The first thing you need to do is there's a jumper here by D6 and D7. You want to remove that jumper because that connects the regulated 5 volts to the rest of the board for the chips and etc. And then there is a crowbar circuit, I think, that comes back this way. I believe so. I might actually double check that. But anyway, so the first thing you want to do is remove that, and then we're going to test these diodes real quick. We can test the capacitors, this transistor here, this NPN, as well as this voltage regulator, now that I powered up. Also, we want to check these 2 resistors here. One is 4 ohms and one's 50 ohms. So I'm going to do that real quick and we'll be right back. Alright, let's put our our multimeter to diode test, and then we're just going to check from the banded side. That doesn't seem right, does it? There we go. Need to disconnect the AC power there, but we got over limit on the banded side to the unbanded side, like that. Gonna test these here. Same thing, and then in the reverse direction, just like testing a normal diode, we should have 0.4 to 0.8. So we know that's good. Test our meters here. Test our resistors. This should be 50 ohms. This should be 4 ohms. That's what we get. We want to check for shorts on the capacitors. I don't think you can test these in circuit, actually. Yeah, you can't test those in circuit. I'm not, but I just replaced these, so I know they're good, or at least I believe they are. Alright, I plugged in the AC power there. We're going to test from ground, which I'm grabbing from one of these capacitors, to base, and should get 5.6. Yeah, this is about right, I think. Around 6 volts DC to the, that is the base, right? Yeah. And then this is the collector, getting about 8 volts there, 9 volts DC, and then I have 7 volts on the emitter. So it's BCE is what it should be anyway. And if you come to, hopefully you can see this okay, because I got my meter in the way a little bit. But this is your 5 volts coming from the voltage regulator. This should be your 5 volts, which matches the emitter side here. They're tied together. This is your input into the voltage regulator, which is 15.6 volts. Can't really see it. And then the output here is around 6 volts. That output comes to the base here, So I'm thinking this is wrong. So the output of the voltage regulator, 5.9, goes to base, which is 5.9. Collector is 8, which is coming from the diodes up here, D7 and D6. But the emitter is 7. Now, I don't know if that's because I currently have the jumper removed, so there's no 5-volt load, so maybe it can't regulate itself. What I'm going to do is put this jumper back in, test it again, and then probably replace this with a tip 31. Okay, instead of putting the jumper in, I just want to see if I can test it with, I pulled this transistor, this D44 VM4, and replaced it with a tip 31, but putting my meter to diode test right away from base to emitter, I get no reading there, base to emitter or base to collector, which you should get some voltage drop there. So this thing appears to be bad. So let's go ahead and power it on. Plug it in, power it on. Let's see what we get. Still 7.6 volts. Six volts there. 8 volts there. Still 7.7 there. So maybe I assume that this was bad, but let's go ahead and put that jumper back in and see if it regulates itself. Got my jumper in. See what we get. .9 volts, looks good. Yep, 4.9 volts, and if I just come to one of these capacitors down here, 4.9 volts. Okay, so we are now good to go with this board. It ended up being that transistor right here wasn't able to test it in circuit sufficiently, and obviously without having that jumper in there, there's no 5-volt load, so it's not regulating itself. So that's not a great way either. So, all right, that's all I have.